Hello and welcome to the Mount Gretna School of Arts lecture series, hosted here in the Pennsylvania Chautauqua's Hall of Philosophy. This is our 6th of 7 weeks of the summer of our intensive program, which attracts college through graduate level students from all over the country. And they are, really hit a crescendo at this point in the summer. I'm just walking through the storage area in the classroom today. I'm really proud of what they are achieving. And these lectures are a very natural way for us to share the cultural resources that the school attracts with the community here, the greater community of Mount Gretna and the Pennsylvania Chautauqua. I'd like to make special thanks to Stinson Strout for his support of the lecture series this summer. And also thank some of our seasoned sponsors, the Purpose One Visual Marketing, the Mount Gretna Arts Council, the Rodney G. DeHaven Fund, the William Drindle Endowment of the Mount Gretna United Methodist Church, the Rosemary Beck Foundation, the Golden Foundation, and the Thomas A. and Georgina T. Rousseau Family Foundation. All right, now I'm going to introduce Eric Holzman, who came down from New York City today. He's going to tell you more about himself, but he attended Tyler for his BFA and Yale for his MFA. And about that same time in the 70s, he did a summer at Skowhegan and the New York Studio School. So it was interesting for me to see that he had some similar experiences like this when he was studying. He's had some solo shows recently at John Davis, Hudson, New York, and Sideshow in Brooklyn. He was in the 2018 American Academy of Letters show, which is a really exciting show. He teaches at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. Well, he has taught there and the New York Studio School and Bard and a couple other places. And recipient of a Paula Krasner grant. I think I saw some others, lots of artist grants. So I'm very honored to have him here tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. I have to begin to say that I came thinking about a completely different thing. Like I thought I was going to have to really work hard and teach and stuff like that. But Jay and I walked around today. The work was so beautiful, really terrific paintings. To you guys and to your teachers, you've done phenomenal. Most of you probably know how rare it is to fairly straightforward. It's not something that's sort of featured most anywhere in the world. Really, a lot of it stuff I couldn't do, or came close to, or maybe equal, or maybe did it once. But it's still just lots of really great stuff. Anyway, that being said, does everybody know the song One by U2? The song's like a prayer to me. And the band itself does nothing extra. And he sings it seems to me, at the edge of his range. It's very, very emotional. I thought that would be a nice way to start things off and shake things up and get you guys into a place that was all those things that are important to me, spiritual and emotional. So anyway, so we could start now with my work. So this is like undergraduate school. And I had a great teacher who, him and his wife, you probably don't know this painter, John Moore. He showed at Thershel Niagara for many, many years. And John and Sandy, they were just, they were that much older than me. It was his first teaching job, and it was my first time away from home. And so John introduced me to two painters that became so important to me. And then as time went on, well, you'll see there's sort of a narrative, and sort of an interesting narrative to this whole page. So Morandi and Baltus, you can see in these first two paintings that are from undergraduate school. That's about, I guess, about 2/3 the size of what it is there. And here you can really see Baltus. This one's about, actually, maybe even a little bigger than that, about 6 feet square, I think. And it's not as dark. So this is undergraduate school. And it was a very interesting time, this like late 60s. And it was a time when representational painters would start to get shown in New York. Between Fairfield Porter and Alex Katz. And, okay, so now I'm in graduate school. And I got this idea in my head. I don't know how. I was even already in undergraduate school, but I get these ideas like that. I had to figure out how I was going to fit into everything. So, oh, that painting is about a quarter the size. They look silly so big. Anyway, the question was how to fit into our art history. So here I was thinking about Alex Katz, and I was thinking about Matisse, and you could see a little of both of them, I think, in this painting. Oh, thanks. Oh yeah, and then you see Alex Katz right there. And I got so good at painting him that it was the same, really. He was very nice about it. He liked it. He liked that. 5, 6, 7, 8 years out of graduate school, and I'm kind of here. I wanted to find my way past them, which meant at the time, painting flatter, faster, thinner in every way, including emotionally, spiritually. Then, when I was 30, later than anybody else I'd known, I went to Europe. I had a friend, Louisa Chase, who was a wonderful painter. And she was talking about seeing these paintings. I thought, gee, I don't know anything about that. And so I got it in my head to go to Italy for the first time. So this trip changed everything, because I spent like a week in the Louvre, right? So I'm looking at everybody, French painting, Chardin, and Corot, and then going to a big Giotto, actually, of St. Francis. And then after that, I go to the Pompidou Center. And I think in my memory, one of the first things I saw was these 2 cast Valentine ale cans of Jasper Johns. Can you picture that? Can you imagine that after looking at George Nolan? So from there, you know, then eventually I made my way to Italy, where everything else. Oh, so I forgot. So this is when I got home. So when I got home, I started all over again. I thought I was starting again with Degas. It's a smaller paint. It's a really much smaller, it's a small paint. Oh, okay. So this painting is almost that big. So you can see here and here, in different ways, I'm trying to come to grips with, I guess I could say, the whole history of art. Because here I'm thinking, like, what if Chardin was 8 feet big, you know? And what if those plums were saints instead of plums? So that's what was in my mind. Because I really wanted to be Giotto at that point, I think. Or Giotto with Chardin. So I never really, even since then, you'll see I'll go through all this stuff. And most of the time I'm never as clear as I was when I first started. Well, hopefully I've done some things along the way that are worthwhile. So here I'm thinking of another person, Frangelico. I'm thinking, have you been to Florence? Everybody? That hand that floats and, you know, is trying to make something like that. And that's about a quarter of the size of that, or smaller. And that's a small painting. Done, you know, begun from life, but turned into something else. You know, you could see, I think, in these paintings, what I was aiming at, what I had left behind, right? I guess you could say spirit. When I got back from Europe, I saw that, I thought to myself, these painters prior to the modern Europe were like really grown-ups. Like they really put the world on their shoulders, the human condition on their shoulders. I could argue this. I mean, I'm sure there are people who totally disagree, and they'd be right too. But my point of view is that we have a kind of enfant terrible image of the artist. Maybe that's changing now. I don't know. Maybe that's what I grew up with. But I saw these people in Paris. It totally changed my life. You know the Bellelli family, Degas? It's a really big painting. It's an early one with a husband and a wife with two children. One is in the middle of the husband and wife. One of them is sheltered, two little girls, sheltered by the mother's black dress. And this painting is so deep psychologically and so sad. But the thing about this painting was it's so beautiful. And Degas painted it with so much love. Now Degas, on the other hand, you know, Degas is noted to be sort of a dickhead. But be that as it may, he could paint love like crazy. So the painting could be both very deep emotionally and very sad, but also the artist could bring so much transcendence and aspiration through just caring so much. All these things. These weren't things that were really talked about, you know, when we were students at all. And in fact, now that I'm thinking of it, they seem like very feminine traits. Anyway, so this is a small version of a painting I made into a big painting. And you know, I'm just going through these, and you can see me working back and forth with different. You know, here I'm going way back to like Roman painting, like fresco painting. But I'm still bouncing around between all of history. Really. That's about 2/3 the size of that. The light, it's very washed out. It's got a little better color. But you can see how nice the drawing is, and the touch is very good. Same time. Oh, that's a portrait of the photographer and filmmaker Rudy Burkhardt. And it's about 2/3 the size of that. So there's all these things that modernism left out that I decided to try to put back in. Heroism or grandeur or so maybe we'll see some drawings now. That's my son and my wife. Of course, it's small. It's not a huge drawing. It's just like that. You know, I don't even really know exactly the dates, but it must have been after 1995, somewhere after that. Oh, and there's a painter that I got very to love, and I still do love very, very much. Maybe my favorite living painter is Lopez Garcia. You know him? So this drawing makes me think I must have been thinking about Lopez. Yeah, you know, the thing is about him is that I feel like I couldn't think about him. I haven't thought about him enough. He said something really interesting in an interview. He said he thinks his problem as a painter is that he's too Catholic. And I think what he means is that he cares too much, and there's no irony. You're shaking your head, yes, you agree?
It's Catholic with a small c. Very inclusive.
Yeah, he's very inclusive and embracive and really tries to love the hell out of every mark he makes, everything he looks at. There's no separation, which to me, he manages to do that while being a modern painter. That's a quarter of that size. For several reasons, I realized I needed to paint big. So that made me almost the size of that. So here, my paintings became very, what I call conceptual, because I had a kind of a program that I followed when in other words, I had a way to do them. And as I painted them, I painted them box by box from the small painting. I had learned some things from early days when I painted like Alex Gatz, how to make a small painting big and all. Well, I thought I knew. But in this painting, it might be interesting to you because it's interesting to me anyway, how these paintings were made. I'll show you one more. This one, this one. These are all big. That's a bad slide, but get the idea. So in the paintings, they were made, I make a grid and then I just paint them box by box and then sew the edges together as I move from one box to the next. So the grid would be on the small painting as well. And when I look at one box on the grid, I mix the colors. Like, there's only a few colors in this painting. So I would mix them for that box. And then apply them really fast. Because the idea of these paintings was the energy was going to hold it together. So each box would look, kind of undone, and I'd say, but then I'd learned to do this. And this is something, could be, I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but it's such a big part of my life. But then I'd paint along, and it doesn't look like a heck of a lot, but I just did what I was supposed to do. And then I'd ask Spirit, should I go on or not? Yes, go on. So every box would be equally sort of undone. But they actually look nice sometimes when it's just, scattered across the surface, the boxes. It would look more like a modern painting or a contemporary painting. So anyway, so that's the deal with this. That slide's a little washed out, very washed out. And this one, this painting, this slide, this painting went much further after. But I started to dream of putting figures into these paintings. Sort of a Arcadian wedding of humanity with nature. Anyway, that painting is complete. That's a terrible slide, but I don't think I have better one. But it's very big. It's like a nice, really big abstract expressionist, sort of landscapey, Turner-esque. I don't know. Had a nice presence. But these are all from this nice series. The problem as I look back now, as I look at it, I painted in the drips, actually. And I made them bigger painting. And in a way that makes the big painting small. It screws up the scale a little bit. Just enough. But it has some really nice qualities as well. And I guess this drawing is from around that time. Oh, well, now it seems like we're skipping ahead a bit. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago. That's a big drawing, actually. It's about, not that big, I don't think. It's a big drawing. Worked on a long time with all kinds of everything I could think of to get it, to do whatever. To feel right, because you see the thing about those other ones that I call conceptual, when they were done, they were pretty done. I could weave back in a little bit if there was something, if the energy needed that, but basically when they were done, they were done. Something like this, and really how I work now, sometimes there's just no end in sight. And sometimes I'm this close, and it's not a good way to work. I know, I hope that sounds funny, but it's also true. And I'm not being ironic. That's a small painting done outside and then inside. But you can see that could be made into a big painting if I was still painting the way I was. I could mimic the pentimenti that sort of runs through, especially at the top, I can mimic that. But not really, and maybe someday I'll paint like that again, I don't know. It certainly simplifies things because you get up in the morning and you know what you're going to do. I think I was thinking about Elizabeth Murray. Does anybody here know Elizabeth Murray? I mean, some of us older folks do. he made these paintings, I guess in the 70s or 80s, these big flat pieces of color. So that's about that size. But again, the color, they look different on the computer, isn't that right? That's not too bad. That I thought looked terrible on the computer, and here it looks pretty good. Although in real life it has more color. It's a very small painting, and I did some big paintings from it because I really love this painting. Why? Does anybody have any idea why I love this painting?
Reminds me of Constables.
Reminds you of Constable? That's a good answer. Any other guesses?
Slow places to rest.
Yeah, flow and places to rest. And I think, you know, I think what you're saying is all right. But for me, what it is for me is it's so, the space is so shallow. It's only about that deep. But it's a landscape, nonetheless. It keeps giving and coming back. I don't know, I think it's about that how shallow it is. But to me, I control this flow, as you say, Jay, but also control the space, that deep place where the light is down there. To be able to get that light to be so deep, but also completely integrated on the surface is really, I'm still very enamored by this. And it began outside, but a lot of screwing around. Oh, that's a terrible image of one of the big ones. That's another big one that's made from it. It's flashier, but I don't think I like it better. But I think it probably communicates a little better. I don't know. That's a really tiny painting that began outside and then evolved. A long time in the studio, mostly in the studio. There's a Turner, I don't know if you've seen these, there's a couple of Turners he did in Italy, or he did one after being in Italy. And there's these two trees. Maybe it's one tree, but one half is cool, one half is warm. And so I thought, okay, that's what this painting is going to be, warm and cool. And so that's, then it started to become, get the magic that I was looking for. And that's a big one. There's a sister to that one I just passed, but I don't think I have an image of it. Much the same. You can see the similarity in the idea. And this is a painting made from one of those little ones. But it's not made the way those other big paintings are made. It's made, you know. Oh, actually, that's a really big painting, also made from that other painting. I thought I was looking at the same painting again for a second. Oh, that looks good. So, you know, you can see that same landscape there, basically, right? Only this time, I saw this, I don't know where I found it. Someone sent me a postcard, I'm not sure how it came to me. But an image, there's a Titian of Shepherd and a Nymph. And actually in the Titian, he's playing flute, right? But it really looks like his arm is around her. But it's really, in the Titian, it's her arm wrapped around her own shoulder. So I thought, wow, I could put them in these landscapes to make an Arcadian world. By Arcadian, I don't know if we all know what that is. So I thought, oh man, if I could get those figures to lay under. So that tree, which was really in the distance, you know, came way forward. And I took in these paintings, I take from everybody. Like I took some of the leaves from Lopez, I took this and that from everywhere. And, you know, finally I got those figures to lay in there pretty good, I think. I don't really have any big problems with it. But, you know, the thing about doing this is you don't know how to, I don't know how to do it. None of us really were trained to do this kind of thing, right? I mean, Bruce paints, I know, big, elaborate figurative paintings too. We know each other, by the way. I know I wasn't. I had no. I just it's all hit or miss. Try this, try that. And this is about 2/3 of the size. So this is what I'm doing now. So I got really dumped. I was going to say dumped into this kind of pain, but I got dumped from a relationship, which really like took me like through. Anyway, it took me close to the spirit, and these things. That's if you make something good out of bad stuff that happens, and it's you can thank. I think that's how it's supposed to work. Yeah, so I got to these paintings where I really couldn't. I just didn't know what else to do but to paint like this. So really, I'm just trying to paint like Judge Young and hope for the best. But I'm surprised that doesn't look. That looks pretty good to me too. I'm really surprised. Here he's, trying to. At first, it was me trying to reach out to this woman. It's from a Etruscan sculpture. This painting was inspired by a painting I saw a long time ago by Rubens, who I really not my cup of tea, but it was beautiful, beautiful Rubens of Mary Magdalene, which I think is in Lyon. So not only do I really not know how to do any of this, I don't really know anatomy that well, but try to make it so it's not a problem. Get it good enough so it doesn't look like a problem. And here I'm just trying to what? I'm obviously trying to paint portrait. Well, they're much smaller. They look better smaller. But really just trying to put back a lot of stuff that modernism took out. It's something interesting to do with one's life if you think about it. Keep you off the streets and what. This is a good one. This one, I don't mean to sound like that, but people like this one. And I think it was more complete in some ways than some of the other ones. And that figure went through tremendous changes. It began as a figure I took from an El Greco, and then became all kinds of other things. Well, it's still sort of like that. But the thing is about all these paintings is to get the figure to stay in the painting and to be, not to illustrate an idea, but to have it be, wedded in the paint itself. I was thinking of Ryder, for instance, beautiful. Well, I never really knew as well until these paintings started to come to me. And I think of this painting now, like I think what I call it is a tarantella. I heard a woman who had come from Sicily with a group of musicians to play the tarantella. And she was saying that originally the tarantella means tarantula. And women would meet secretly in the woods, I guess, secret place, where they could heal each other. So this is like ancient ways, the ancient world that some people carried with them. But these people could have been, millions of people were murdered during the Inquisition and before and after for carrying these ancient ways, these healers, people who knew about herbs, people who connected to God in ways that the church didn't approve of. So imagine these women getting together and dancing. Tarantella is, from what I understand, 6'8", which is around the whole planet. Anyway, that's a fascinating little side story, like a lot. Anyway, so I think that might be a good name for this painting. I'm not sure. Maybe we could go through this a little. Oh, we'll end with some drawings. Small, most of these are smaller now. Okay, so I think now we're at the end. I'm just going to end with a series of drawings that I've been doing for last. They started a few years before COVID. I was working outside. So it's sort of a combination, if you don't mind me to explain it. So like it's trying to like get the kind of, it's definitely something about Persian and Indian painting, you know, where they would set up an image in front of a ground. You know? So it wasn't real. So there wasn't realism, but some kind of metaphor. You see what I'm trying to say? Always trying to get at this poetic in-between state. And they're all little drawings, 7 by 11. But I'm really sure of them. These I know are good. At least I thought so a couple months ago. I'm not so sure. I don't know. Oh, yay, the end.
You mentioned at the beginning about you were thinking a lot about how you fit into art history. I was wondering if you could figure that out.
I can see that my tastes are really 500 years old, basically. Except I think maybe pointing the possibility of something else. Because I wrote down the other day, I was trying to think of everything. I was thinking about all these ways that I'm not modern. You know, there's a tyranny to it, to a lot of ideas that have passed along, and a lot of misinterpretations, I think, that are taken for granted, taken as gospel. And I think it's just, a lot of it is very wrong. A lot of people haven't thought things through completely. I could say a lot. Well, I've seen analytical cubist paintings that are just phenomenal. And lots of Picasso's and Robertson. In a way, it's not so much an indictment of particular things or particular people as it is a way that things become set in stone and that people don't question. Like D.H. Lawrence wrote that an essay about Cézanne, where he's saying how, in his words, I think he said something like, everybody who followed Cézanne followed the decree of what Cézanne did. And so they sort of schematized it. Cézanne was really a kind of, maybe Matisse at times got somewhere close in some way, because to me, like Cézanne really traveled in between the worlds, in between this existence and non-existence. Which, and when I say non-existence, I don't mean non-existence, I mean physical, spirit and form, between spirit and form, which I think is the name of this lecture, which I hope isn't a lecture. But anyway, I think he lived in this place, you know, and I don't think, like I said, the Cubists schematized it, and they made it into something. And the Fauves did something, they both were like polar opposites, but also very conceptualizing. They conceptualized what Cézanne did and what Gauguin did. On the other hand, just as a slight aside, Fairfield Porter thought that Vuillard, he said he thought Vuillard was a better painter than Cézanne because he thought Cézanne schematized things too much. You see what I'm saying? Interesting, right? So nobody owns the truth. It's really the basic, underlying thing, you know. I guess you could say, well, we live in this sort of mercantile world, or we have a, see, I really think everything's about to change. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe over the next 20 or 30 years, but I see lots of evolving and lots of changing. How it all for the better. I don't know how it will be better, but so that's how I fit into it. In short.
I was wondering, many of your paintings and some of your drawings have sort of like a wash kind of quality to the edges or something that feels very, I don't know, there's like really interesting kind of texture to it. So I'm curious what different like mediums you tend to use in your paintings and your drawings.
Well, for a long time I used turpentine until I couldn't because it burned my throat. And then I had to find a different way. And then one of the last things with turpentine was that really beautiful still life that had that shimmer to it. Remember that? I mean, I'm really sad that I can't do that anymore. Because turpentine behaved in such a way that I could glaze in a certain way. So then I just started to use a more drier idea, thicker kind of paint. And then I think we started to put sand into paint a lot, and also like a fine sand, and also some, what do you call it, impasto medium. Williamsburg used to make jars of it. Now I'm not doing that as much because painting it, because I'm glazing, stumbling, scraping. So it's not as conceptual. In other words, the attack. Those are the ones that's like all this. I think, you know why? I think to a large extent, because sometimes I find brushwork appalling, actually. Nobody here, I didn't see that anywhere here. And then I see a lot of brushwork, beautiful brushwork. But sometimes brushwork just looks like vanity to me. So I try to really hide my stroke.
So you spoke about kind of poetry and spirit in your work. What's the importance of that to you? You sing those out a lot.
Well, I always had this bent towards, not always, but by the time I think I was in graduate school, I was thinking about the larger implications of what I did. Maybe even before that, you know, in terms of like philosophy. What is the philosophy of it? I don't know, but I think slowly along the line I had a little spiritual bent. But then when I went to Europe, and you know, you look at Frangelico, his name wasn't Frangelico, it was because he painted angelic people. I thought that was so cool. The spirit really imbues all the work, you know, up until 20th century. Even the Impressionists to some degree, and certainly that Degas is talking about, that early Degas, and certainly Cezanne. At one point I was thinking I was going to paint like shamanic, you know, like the way trees would talk, like the inner life of a tree, like those big paintings. Like I said, I got this, I could see my scale was a little long because I made a mistake in painting the drips sometimes and stuff. Maybe I needed to adjust them more when they were done, I don't know. But that was the idea. You know, life just took me to being more spiritual. And like I said, having a relationship that really is really hard to recuperate from. And a death, you know, all these things that are somebody I was very close to. And if you're inclined that way, I guess, and I am, they bring you much closer to spirit. Because there's no other way out. I was driving over here today for a minute. I had different experiences looking at the trees. And for 1 minute, or I was looking, suddenly this emptiness came over me. And it was something that sort of dogged me. It was like kind of where I lived when I was younger. A world where that wasn't inhabited by spirit. You know? Oh, can I just leave that moment right there and come back? Because one big thing that changed my life was yoga. And the Beatles, the people who were just a little older than me, and compassion. That's the other thing, compassion and empathy in pre-modern life. All those things. But they're all related to a kind of sense of oneness that we all share, really, when we can somehow drop our egos, which isn't so easy. So where I am now in my life, it's really more important than anything. I just want to be happy more than anything.
As an artist that seems to always be able to go back into a painting that maybe they thought was done at one point, and then seeing you being struck by something about a particular picture today, and thinking in the back of my mind that you might still go back into it after being somewhat pleased by it.
Well, that head that I ruined, I'm gonna look at that image again and try to repaint it to the image that I had before.
So what's it mean to keep the painting open like that?
I think the thing about that is not selling a lot. Not selling a lot. Which is not anything I'd recommend. But the other part of that is it's natural to me. I'm like that in my life because I've had to think about it because I talk to other artists and artists seem surprised that I do that. But more and more people seem to be doing that these days, maybe because of the way things have been these last years and people have been along with their work more. I'm not sure. But I think my vision gets better as I I just keep seeing more possibilities. And I think that's not always good, sometimes it's done when it's done. And I'd like to try living like that and selling everything. Oh yeah, listen, take it away. That would be great. I would really like to try that. And, but I think I'd still paint slow. And I like the idea of slow. There's that slow food movement. I think everything is great to be slow. One of my teachers, William Bailey, did a talk a few years before he died at the studio school. He talked really slow. Yeah, it's nice. It's very meditative. So there's something to that.
Earlier I did say slow, not slow.
Oh.
Nice to hear you circle back to that.
Oh, but about that painting also that we were talking about and about modernism. Jasper Johns is not a painter I really like, except for maybe four of them, I would say. And but I think his his intent and the intensity of his space, of his shallowness, is something that must have gotten under my skin, because that painting from before, that shallowness. But it's an interesting thing, space and shallowness. You can go all over the world with space and shallowness and different meanings and different cultures, and you can't get flatter than a Japanese woodcut, but you can't get any better either, So and you can't get any more spatial either. So it's a question of I'm answering something that nobody asked me. I think it's something that I've thought about a lot. It's about being. I'm sure you guys have talked about this with your teachers, because so many of you are doing it. About being intentional, controlling the space. But you're all doing it really well. That's why I say don't let people throw you off too much.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay.